So we are going to try this again. If you were with me earlier, you saw that the mowers and the dog were creating such a commotion that it was kind of hard to paint. I am painting outside, and that happens. And I did not know the neighbors had scheduled their yard to be mowed and leaf blown. Let's see, I'm looking for us here on live. No. Where are we? Let's close out of YouTube, reopen YouTube. I'm a little bit older, so that tends to be my answer for everything. Open and close. There we are. Okay, now I can see if you happen to want to chat. All right, we're going to try this again. This is an eastern screech owl. I'm painting live on a regular basis. I can't promise every day, but the majority, 5-6 times a week at least, between now and probably the first of the year. Just trying to get used to the idea of being on camera is why I'm doing this. So help me out, chat with me so I can get used to chatting with people. This is watercolor. I watched the video before this to get an explanation on a few things, but I pretty much do not pay attention to the names of the colors. I stick with this limited palette right here. I don't even always use the green that was added for a tutorial class that required it. But what I do is make sure I have 3 or 4 yellows, cool and warm. Oh, the birds are hollering. Mostly blue jays, I believe. And 3 or 4 reds, cool and warm. 3 and 4 blues, cool and warm. And I have my 3 favorite neutrals, which is, let me see if I can think of this, burnt sienna, sepia, and burnt umber. And pretty much with these, I can mix any color. I do use white Winsor Newton white designer gouache. Now I use tube paint that I pour in here, and maybe I'll do a video on this sometimes, but I let it dry. This way, when I travel through airports and things like that, I have my paints with me. Wet paints, you can take a few tubes through, but if you don't want to check luggage, or if you're just carrying a small carry-on bag, you can't carry a bag of 50 tubes of watercolor. It's just not going to work. So this is my answer. It's also great for painting outside. Now you can tell my palette, I didn't really clean it after the last painting because I'm using pretty much the same hues, same mixes that I used in it. So I decided to keep it. Sometimes I'll clean it off between them. Now when I clean it off, I have baby wipes that do not have lotion or anything in them. And I use those to get the bulk of this cleaned up. And then I just run the water real quick over the tops of these. It cleans them up. Go back with another paper towel to dry it all off and get any color that spilled back on off. And you have a clean palette. Watercolor is very versatile. A lot of people shy away from it. It's my favorite medium. Okay, I have this eastern screech owl that I'm working on. He's peeking. I did the sketch last night. I did a lot more sketching than I normally do. I normally prefer to sketch with my brush, except for the basics. And trying to get the idea of perspective in some areas, I will draw in with a pencil. But I don't like to have to worry about pencil marks in my paintings if I don't have to. And that just comes with practice. The more you paint and the more you draw, the less you're going to need the pencil marks for your paintings. Okay. I have a link down below that will show you where to find the reference photo, It's a Facebook group called Free References for Artists. The only requirement they have is that I cannot show you the actual photo without permission of the photographer. But I think her name is Emmanuelle, E-L-L-E, Emmanuelle. I wrote the name down in the, let's look, in the description so that you would have it if you want to search the group and come up with the reference photo. Let's see, Emmanuelle Vitry-Lermore. I hope I'm pronouncing that right. If not, forgive me. But you can find the reference photo there. If you want to paint this exact owl, they have some wonderful images on that site. I paint from a lot of my own photos, and I collect my own reference photos, especially for competitions and through like the watercolor societies and things like that, because you need original compositions for that. So whenever I collect my own reference photos. I actually have a good spot for collecting screech owl photos over at Dunbar Cave in Clarksville, Tennessee, but I have not been up there in a while. I will be that direction over Thanksgiving week. Is that next week or the week after? Maybe I can get up there at dusk and dawn and get some photos. I love their screech owls on their hiking trails up there. Barred owls are really good from Warner Park. I was always able to find barred owls up there. But for this, using the reference photo is just fine. I don't copy it exactly, and I don't put in quite all the detail that the reference photo has. But I do use it for inspiration, and in this case, the owl will be the owl that's in the reference photo. Just maybe not all the detail. I prefer more of a illusion of details rather than painting the details in. Okay, let's pick a blue, any blue. We're gonna mix some black. I mix it as I go. I do not mix a large quantity. And the reason for that is I like it to vary. You'll hear me say that in everything I do. Creates more realism and more depth. Even gives it a little more, what do I want to say, oomph to your picture when you do that. Okay, we have some blue. Let's pick a red, any red. The only time I'm picky about colors is if I'm doing a transparent watercolor painting, in which case you want to pay attention to your watercolors because some of them are semi-opaque, opaque, or transparent. Should I say semi-transparent, not semi-opaque? Okay, I've mixed enough red in there to make a purple. I am going to pick one of my neutrals. I'm picking sepia because it's got more of that matte flat look when you paint it, and I'm wanting that in these crevices. And then I'll choose the more vibrant colors to mix my black in the bird. That'll make it stand out a little more. The way, just play with your watercolors. Like I said, this one will dry kind of flat and matte. Whereas if I use one of my other two neutrals, they'll dry a little more vibrant. And you can use that to your advantage because the matte will recess and the vibrant will bring it forward. So that's what we're gonna do. Alright, I want a little more blue. I probably shouldn't be talking and doing this. Normally when I'm painting, I am listening to something. But that's not going to happen other than the birds, because I'm recording right now, and I'm sure you don't want to listen to the TV in the background. Alrighty. Now this does not need to be exact. Trees are not exact. Holes are not exact. So if you get something off, play with it. It'll be fine. There we go. Now I'll be painting on this little guy. I'm going to paint it hopefully all live. I said that last time. And one of my lives wasn't live and I thought it was. So a little bit of my last painting didn't make it into the recordings. This is more of a demonstration, even though I am giving some instruction about watercolor. I have classes available on Patreon to teach you my technique. This technique was just created through my own trial and error. I did follow a lot of YouTube tutorials and even did some classes. Specifically, I think watercolor classes were Anna Mason. To learn a little bit about botanical. I love the detail in botanical painting, but I discovered I love painting wildlife. So what I've done is I've taken what I learned from there and I have applied it to painting wildlife, and at the same time sort of kind of changed it up to where I've painted enough that I've developed kind of my own style now. So when you see a painting of mine, you know it's mine by looking at it without having to look up who I am. And that's just come with time. Yes, I did tutorials, but between tutorials I'd do a class with Anna Mason, go off and do my own thing, practicing what I learned, and then come back and took another class. And I did that for 2 or 3 years, painting almost every day. And in time, leaving the class, applying what I learned, and then going back helped me develop my own style. Because I wasn't, yes, I did do copying her work during the classes, but by going off on my own between the classes, I was able to experiment, practice some of what I learned and experiment and discover what worked for me. Now, something I wouldn't give on is use quality paints. Student grade are okay to learn with, but I recommend if you have the money, jump into the professional grade. And then never skip on paper. Always use a high quality paper. I use Arches. Most of the time, there's been a few times I couldn't get it, and I've used Fabriano or Waterford. And then I will also, if the painting is not going to require too many layers, I will use Stonehenge. But I've discovered if I'm going to use Frisket or masking fluid, or if I'm going to apply a lot of very wet layers, then Stonehenge is not going to work. But it does work if there's not a lot of layers involved. Okay, I'm just putting in the darks in my painting and mapping them out. Normally, I would start with the lights and then go to the darks. But this painting, the darks kind of guide the lights. So we are going to do it this way. I've done both. My subject usually determines how I get things down on paper. There's not a hard and fast rule, and don't let anyone who paints watercolor tell you that. Get it on the paper. It'll all work out. And if you don't like the finished result, it's paper and paint. You can start over. It's even fun sometimes to start over. I've done a couple of paintings 2 and 3 times. And I discovered things that in the process of repainting it that I decided I wanted to do over that I didn't even realize I wanted to do over. Okay. I have this old nasty rag up here. It's just a white terry cloth, washcloth, and every once in a while I replace it. And I use this because it's washable. I've got a couple of them. And it's very easy to replace. Let's see, the foot is right here. We're going to do the foot there. There's another foot tucked in there that's hard to see. And then I'm just going to kind of, there we go. All right, and then the one down here. I want to make sure I didn't paint over where the foot goes. Because the feet are very light colored. I want to preserve some of that. I'll be using some white gouache, but at the same time, I want to preserve that so I don't have to paint over the gouache. Okay. Let's see, do I have any other really dark darks in here? Now this is looks like a red morph eastern screech owl. There is a dark morph that is a lot more sepia toned. This one here will be more sienna toned with a little bit of umber mixed in with it when we get going. Now this doesn't need to be perfect. It's a tree. As long as you get the gist of the tree, every little nook and cranny does not need to be specific. And I always try to paint these things in the direction of like the bark, the tree bark, the feathers, things like that, so that way, did I get this? Yes, I did. Let's do over here. And this does not need to be exact. This is the foundation layer. You hear some squirrels playing. I don't know if you can hear that or not. Also heard a little tufted titmouse, a bird. Hear that? That's a tufted titmouse. Okay. Playing in the trees out here. There he goes again. There's woods back here behind this house where I'm at today. Okay. Now this is the point I was hoping we would have got to earlier when those mowers showed up. Oops, no, wait. I do. My little Princeton brushes right now seem to be what happy with. I go through phases. I haven't collected that many of them yet, but the 2 or 3 that I do have, I am in love with and hoping to eventually work into having more of them. Let's see, I want to create some crevices here. I don't want that one too dark. There we go. Yes, I make noises while I'm painting. Let's see. I'm trying to decide here if I want to include these or not. I guess I am. That seems to be what's happening. These are some little breaks in the tree. There's a bunch of little holes here that have obviously been bored in by bugs or a bird, woodpecker, something like that. Looks more like bugs rather than. Boy, those squirrels are having fun. I hear a red-bellied woodpecker in the background now. Okay, I may add some more of those later. All right. I am going to I believe, let this dry. Do a little more in here. Every time I add a layer, I like to define the eyes a little bit. Because if you put just a blob of black down there, it is not going to have any depth whatsoever. So I will go over the edges many times. I say I'm going to stop here and then I don't, huh? Okay. It is time to stop because all this needs to thoroughly dry so that I can go over and add my lighter tones to the tree and to the little bird here. We should name him. Anyhow, Screechy. We'll name him Screechy for Screech Owl. Okay, well, don't know if I'll be back again today. What time is it? Probably not. I imagine I will probably be back tomorrow and start adding more to him. Tomorrow I'll probably be on 2 or 3 times while we get this foundation complete and get into the layering process. So I'll see you tomorrow. Have fun. Go look up the reference photo if you want to follow along. And I'll see you then. Check my Instagram stories and Facebook stories. I'll let you know roughly when I'll be on. Because I do other things also in addition to painting, I can't give you an exact time during this trial and error phase I'm doing this month and next month. All this will get more regular in January and a little more predictable for you. Okay, see you soon.